Let me ask you something, and try not to rush your answer. Have you ever stood near a swamp? Not a lake, not a river. I mean a real swamp, the kind that doesn't mirror the sky but swallows it. The kind of place where sound dies before it reaches the trees, where the ground feels alive under your feet, and where even the birds hesitate to name what they've seen. If you've ever felt that strange tightening in your chest, when a place seems to be watching you, hold on to that feeling, because the story I'm going to tell you now was born in a place exactly like that. And before we go any further, breathe in slowly. Let yourself settle into this moment. We're stepping into a part of Brazilian history that most textbooks don't just ignore, they actively avoid. Rio de Janeiro, 1864. A time when the empire still believed it could silence the world by chaining the people who built it. A time when slavery was a law, when fear was currency, and when certain men I wish I could call merely mistaken, built their lives on the hunt. This story is about one of those men. His name was Amaro Ferraz, and if you had lived in Rio in the 1860s, you would have known his name the way a storm knows thunder. Loud, unavoidable, and always followed by something terrible. Let me paint him for you. Tall, broad-shouldered, skin burned by years of sun, mustache so thick it curled into permanent scorn. He wore leather boots that never seemed to stay clean, a dark hat pulled low, and a coat that smelled of gunpowder, sweat, and the marshes he stalked. Amaro wasn't a soldier. He wasn't a farmer. He wasn't even a businessman. He was a slave hunter. In Portuguese, Capitão do Mato. But don't let the title fool you. There was nothing noble about what he did. Nothing heroic. Nothing necessary. His job was simple. Track down black men, women, and children who had risked their lives to escape the plantations around the capital and bring them back in chains or in pieces. And he was good at it. Good in the way a vulture is good at noticing death. Good in the way a wolf is good at following a bleeding trail. His talent didn't come from intelligence, or discipline, or any kind of twisted duty. It came from something colder, a void inside him, where empathy should have lived. But even hunters bleed, even predators fear, and even the cruelest men eventually meet a place that refuses to bow to them. For Amaro Ferraz, that place was a swamp, known by locals simply as the mouth of the earth, the mouth of the earth. Now, if you're imagining a gentle wet land with reeds and pretty reflections on the water, stop. This wasn't that kind of place. This was a living grave, a stretch of muddy water and tangled roots that shifted every month, swallowing livestock, drowning careless fishermen, and hiding things, human things, that no one ever looked for. People in the region believed the swamp could think. Some said it whispered at night. Some said it moved when no one was watching. Some swore that those who stepped into it never truly left, even if their bodies were found. Amaro, of course, laughed at all of it. He believed in one thing only, his own brutality. And that's where our story begins, with a man who feared nothing, walking straight into the one place that feared nothing back. It was early August, the air thick enough to drink. Rio de Janeiro shimmered with heat, its hills wrapped in a haze of dust and sweat. The sound of horse hooves echoed along the old road, and at the center of the noise was Amaro, riding toward the slave quarter of a plantation, owned by a man who had far more money than conscience. 3 fled last night. The overseer told him, wiping mud from his boots. 2 men and a girl, headed north, we think, toward the swamp. Amaro smiled, that slow, bone-deep smile that never reached his eyes. That swamp hides nothing, he said. They'll sink, or I'll get them first. He said it like a promise, like a prayer, like the world was required to obey him. He set out alone. No dogs, no assistance, no fear, just a rifle slung across his back, and a machete tapping against his thigh as his boot struck the muddy earth. But here's something he didn't know, something no slave hunter ever understood. People who run for their lives move with a clarity no predator can match. They know the land better. They read the wind better. They trust danger better. And these three fugitives, Joao, Raphael, and a young woman called Ana Flor, had slipped into the swamp, not because they were desperate, but because they were smart. Amaro stepped into a Boca de Terra, just past noon, when the sun should have been bright. But the sky above the swamp looked strangely dim. The trees leaned inward. The mud smelled metallic, like blood soaked into earth. The water barely rippled. "Come out," he shouted, voice cracking through the air. "I'll drag you out either way." But the swamp didn't echo him. It swallowed his voice in one gulp. That was the first warning. He ignored it. The second warning came later, a sound behind him, like breath, human breath, slow, steady, close. He spun around. Nothing, only vines, only shadows. He muttered a curse and kept moving. But you and I, sitting here miles away, safe in our rooms, breathing air that doesn't stick to our lungs, we can see the truth more clearly than he ever did. Something in that swamp was watching him, and it did not blink. Before I tell you what happened next, place yourself in this moment. Ask yourself, what does a man like Amaro fear when he is finally alone? Not justice, not punishment, not God. He fears what he cannot hunt. And for the first time in years, Amaro Ferraz wasn't the predator. He was the prey. Before we step deeper into this, put yourself in Amaro's boots for a moment, not to sympathize, but to feel the vulnerability he would never admit. Imagine the ground shifting beneath you every time you try to plant your foot. Imagine the air so dense, it feels like it's pressing its palm against your throat. Imagine knowing for the very first time that nothing in the world is listening to you anymore. That was a swamp. The mouth of the earth didn't just surround you, it claimed you. And by mid-afternoon, Amaro had lost the trail. He would never admit that out loud, of course. Men like him don't confess weakness. They don't acknowledge the moments when fear slips in, like a needle inside the bloodstream. But the truth sat heavily in his chest. Joao, Raphael, and Ana Flor had vanished, not because they were faster, not because they were lucky, but because they understood something Amaro refused to learn. The swamp protects those who respect it and devours those who don't. He scanned the area, squinting through the haze. Dragonflies hovered above stagnant pools. Frogs croaked low, as if warning him to turn back. The humidity made his shirt stick to his skin, like wet cloth on a corpse. Half an hour later, he found the first sign, a footprint, bare, small, pressed lightly into the mud. Ana Flor. She couldn't have been more than 16, but she had the survival instincts of someone who'd seen the world try to break her too many times. Her prints were deliberate, chosen, every step angled in a way that said, "You don't know my land." It infuriated Amaro. He wanted the chase. He needed the chase. Predators panic when their prey refuses to fear them. He followed the tracks, pushing aside branches, slashing vines with his machete. The mud grew deeper, the water darker, the air colder, and then the swamp shifted, a sound behind him, a splash, soft, too heavy to be an animal. He turned. Nothing, only a patch of water, rippling slowly, as if something had dipped beneath it. Moments before, he spat into the mud and kept walking, but his gait changed, shoulders tense, jaw clenched, eyes darting from side to side. By sunset, he reached the heart of the mouth of the earth, a circular clearing of open water, surrounded by tangled mangroves. This was where the stories said the swamp swallowed entire oxen without leaving a trace. And this was where Amaro finally found Joao and Raphael, not alive, not dead, their faces carved into the mud. On the opposite bank, impressions, as if the earth itself had pressed around their skulls, and then released them. No bodies, no blood, just the shape of their expressions. Eyes wide, mouths open, a terror so sharp. It looked fresh. Even Amaro froze at the sight. "Impossible," he muttered. But the swamp didn't care what he believed possible. He knelt to examine the ground. The impressions were recent, too recent, which meant the swamp wasn't hiding them. It was showing him something. A warning, a taunt, or something older, something alive. In a way he could never understand, his pulse quickened. Amaro, the man who had hunted humans, without mercy, felt the first true stab of fear. In years, he stood abruptly, rifle raised, backing away from the shoreline, and that was when he heard it. Help, please. A voice, a girl's voice, thin, fading, trembling, on the floor. It came from the mangroves behind him. Everything inside him snapped to attention, not because he felt compassion. He didn't. Not even because he wanted reward. He wanted power. Catching her meant proving. He had control again. "Where are you?" he shouted. A soft cry echoed back. He ran, branches toward his clothes. Mud swallowed his boots. Mosquitoes bit the exposed skin on his neck, until it bled. Her voice grew weaker, more desperate. "Please, please." He pushed forward into the thickest part of the mangroves, heart pounding, senses sharp, and then he saw her, or what he thought was her. A silhouette, small, still, kneeling in shallow water, hair sticking to her face, hands trembling. He approached slowly, rifle trained on her. "On the floor," he said. "You're coming with me." But she didn't move, didn't flinch, didn't even look up. He stepped closer. "Anna!" She dissolved, her entire figure, collapsed into ripples, as if made of water, not flesh. A hallucination? A trick of light? Or something else? The swamp wanted him to see. Before he could react, the ground beneath him dropped. He fell knee-deep into mud, so cold, it felt like a hand, closing over his leg. He reached for a root. It snapped. He grabbed another, slipped. The mud climbed higher. Thigh, waist, ribs. He screamed, not words, not curses, just raw panic. For the first time in his life, Amaro Ferraz begged, "Help! Help me!" No answer, except one sound. A step, a human step, on wet earth. Someone was there, watching him sink. "On the floor," he shouted. "Please help me. I'll let you go, I swear." Silence, then a whisper. "You should not have come here." It wasn't her voice. It was older, calmer, almost disappointed. The mud tightened. Amaro gasped, fighting for breath. In his last moments of clarity, he realized something horrifying. The swamp wasn't killing him. It was pulling him in, claiming him, as if he belonged to it, more than he ever belonged to the world above. And the last thing he felt, before the mud reached his chest, was a hand, a human hand, pressing gently against the top of his head, pushing, not with hatred, not with fury, with purpose. His scream cut off as the swamp swallowed him whole. Hours later, the water rippled, the mangrove swayed, and the swamp fell silent again, like something that had finally finished its meal. Before we move forward, do one thing with me. Imagine the silence after a scream disappears. Not just quiet, but the kind of silence that feels like it is listening, the kind that settles over a place, like a heavy, unseen presence. That was the silence that fell over Boca de Terra. After Amaro Ferraz vanished beneath the mud, the swamp did not bubble. The water did not churn. No air escaped in a final gasp. It was as if nothing had happened at all, except things were not the same, because the swamp remembers what men forget. The next morning, the plantation overseer expected Amaro to return, dragging 3 fugitives behind him. Instead, his horse returned alone, sweating, shaking, eyes wide with something close to terror. People whispered, servants crossed themselves, and for the first time in decades, the overseer felt a pulse of fear that had nothing to do with rebellion and everything to do with something older. Still, he sent men to look for Amaro, 6 men armed with rifles, 6 men who believed in power, in force, in the illusion that the world bends for those who shout the loudest. By late afternoon, Only 3 returned, and they spoke of things no rational mind wanted to hear. They found no body, no clothes, no rifle, no machete, but they found his tracks, circling confused, as if he had been moving in patterns that made no sense. They found deep furrows in the mud, as if something heavy had been dragged downward, and one of the men, a boy of barely 18, swore he heard footsteps beside his own when no one else was walking. Human steps, he insisted, light, slow, right behind me. The overseer dismissed them with insults. He didn't believe in curses. He didn't believe in haunted swamps. He believed in discipline. But fear has a way of planting seeds, even in the most stubborn soil. That night, the enslaved community gathered quietly behind the senzala, not to celebrate, not to plot, to listen. Ana Flor was there, alive, shaken, but alive. The elders surrounded her, their faces lined with years of suffering and wisdom that no book has ever captured. "What did you see?" they asked. She trembled, her voice cracked. "I didn't see anything," she whispered. "I only heard and felt." They leaned closer. She swallowed hard. When the hunter entered the swamp, the mud moved, the water changed. "What did you hear?" someone whispered. "A voice," she said. "Not a man, not a woman, a voice from the ground." The elders exchanged a look that carried decades of stories, never spoken aloud near white ears. The youngest among them asked, "What did it say?" Ana Flor lowered her head. It said, "He is not leaving." The silence tightened around them, thick as the night, sharp as fear. One of the oldest women, her back bent, her eyes clouded but alert, spoke in a tone that made even the insects quiet. "The swamp has been waiting," she said, "and now it has taken what was owed." No one argued, no one doubted, for they all knew what Amaro Ferraz had done. Long before he ever stepped into a Boca de Terra, he had dragged people back to slavery. He had beaten men. He had hunted children. He had turned the forests and marshes into arenas of suffering. And there are wounds the earth does not forget. 3 days later, the overseer tried to pretend life was normal again. He replaced Amaro with another hunter, a younger man named Cassio, who didn't yet understand that death leaves warnings for those willing to look. Cassio laughed at the rumors, mocked the fear, and rode into the swamp with the arrogance of someone who believed history would never dare touch him. He returned 20 minutes later, pale, shaking, unable to speak. When they finally calmed him enough to get words out of him, he whispered only one thing: "I saw him." They asked who. He pointed toward the swamp, toward the twisting mangroves, toward the fog that hovered above the water like breath. "Him," he repeated. "Amaro, standing there, watching me." They shook him, yelled, demanded details, but the young hunter only cried. "He wasn't real," he said. "He wasn't standing on the ground. He was standing in it. The mud held him up." The plantation fell into chaos after that. Some refused to work. Some refused to sleep. Some refused to step outside at night, because monsters created by men are easier to predict than monsters created by guilt and swallowed by land that knows the truth. 2 weeks passed. Then the government became involved, not because of moral concern. The Empire of Brazil had no shortage of cruelty in its hands, but because Amaro Ferraz had friends in high places and debtors in even higher ones. His disappearance became a matter of order, which meant someone important wanted answers they could put on paper and pretend were rational. A small detachment of soldiers was dispatched to investigate the swamp. They went in armed, disciplined, confident. They returned with nothing but silence. They found no footprints, no clothing, no bones, not a single object associated with the missing hunter. But they all agreed on one detail. Something was wrong with the swamp. It felt heavy, like the air was thicker, like gravity had shifted, like the entire place was waiting. For what? None of them dared to guess. their final report, written with the stiff, brittle language of men who refuse to say what they actually feel, was only one sentence. The terrain shows signs of abnormal movement, but in private, they said something else. That place is not for the living. Meanwhile, on the floor, Joao and Rafael made it safely to a Quilombo hidden deep in the forest, one of many communities of escaped, enslaved people that defied the empire simply by existing. They told their story there, not proudly, not triumphantly, but with a haunted weight that lingered long after the words were spoken. One of the elders of Quilombo listened carefully and finally said, "A swamp like that does not kill for vengeance. It kills for balance." And somehow that made more sense than any official explanation ever could. By the end of the year, no one, not enslaved, not free, not armed, not desperate, would enter the mouth of the earth. Even map makers avoided it. They simply drew a smudge over that part of Rio de Janeiro and labeled it with a single word: impassable. Unpassable. The land had chosen its boundaries, and humans had learned, finally, to respect them. Before we reach the end, do something small but important for yourself. Imagine a place that keeps memories long after people are gone. Not a cemetery, not a monument. A place where memory is not carved into stone, but absorbed into earth, into water, into silence. That was a Boca de Terra. And after Amaro Ferraz vanished into its throat, the swamp didn't settle. It changed. Rumors spread through Rio de Janeiro with the speed of fear. Some said Amaro's face could be seen in the water at night, eyes open, mouth half-parted, as if trying to speak. Some said he followed travelers through the mangroves, his boots sinking without leaving footprints. Some said the mud sometimes rose in the shape of a man and then collapsed again, as if remembering and then forgetting what it had consumed. But the most unsettling story came from a fisherman who lived near the edge of the swamp. He claimed that every dawn, just before the sun cleared the mist, he heard a faint sound, not an animal, not the wind, but something like a whisper saying, "Don't run, don't run, don't run." And though no one admitted it aloud, everyone knew whose voice that was. Meanwhile, the empire demanded answers, not supernatural ones, political ones. Slave hunters were tools of control, and when one disappeared, it sent the wrong message. A commission was assembled consisting of a magistrate, 2 junior officers, and a land surveyor, who very clearly did not want to be there. They interviewed the enslaved community first, but fear does interesting things to truth. Some claimed they saw Amaro riding north. Some swore he boarded a boat toward Niterói. Some said he'd quarreled with a rival hunter and fled, each story more absurd than the last. Deliberately so. You see, the enslaved people had learned long ago that the only safe truth is the one that confuses the powerful. The magistrate sensed deception and grew frustrated. "Someone knows where this man is," he insisted. "People don't vanish into thin air." No one answered him, but the elders exchanged a look that the magistrate was too arrogant to understand. People don't vanish. They were thinking they get taken back by the things they helped bury. 2 weeks into the investigation, the commission finally visited the swamp. It did not go well. The magistrate, walking at the front, pushed aside a branch and froze. There, caught in the thorns, like an offering to something unseen, was a piece of black leather, torn, soaked, and smelling faintly of sweat and rot. A scrap of a boot, Amaro's boot. One of the officers refused to enter the mouth of the earth after that. He stood at the perimeter, stiff as a corpse, and repeated the same sentence over and over. "It's not empty. Something is moving." He resigned 3 days later. No explanation, no goodbye, just left the Empire's service, and never wore his uniform again. The magistrate tried to remain rational, but the swamp pressed against his mind, like a thumb against bruised fruit. Everywhere he looked, the mud seemed to shift, Every shadow felt too solid. Every sound seemed half-human. Finally, he wrote in his report, "Nature here behaves in ways that make testimony unstable." A polite way of saying, the land lies, or tells the truth too loudly. Either way, he closed the inquiry. Amaro Ferraz was declared missing under unknown circumstances, which, in bureaucratic terms, meant the empire preferred the mystery over the explanation, because mysteries don't have consequences, explanations do. But among the people, both enslaved and free, the legend grew. Children were warned, do not insult the swamp. It listens. Runaways were told, if you respect the land, it hides you. If you abuse it, it remembers. And slave hunters learned something too, though few admitted it. No one who entered the mouth of the earth came out unchanged. Some never came out at all. But the most haunting stories emerged years later, after slavery was abolished, after plantations shut down, after the empire itself collapsed. A few older residents claimed they still saw a man near the swamp at dusk, a tall man, broad shoulders, hat pulled low, clothes dripping with mud, but his face was always obscured, either by shadow or by something thicker. And whenever someone tried to approach him, he turned and walked straight into the water, not sinking, not drowning, walking as if the swamp had built him new legs. But there's one more piece of this story that most people never hear. Years after Amaro's disappearance, an Afro-Brazilian elder from a nearby Colombo told a visiting historian, the swamp didn't take him because he hunted. It took him because he hunted without mercy. The historian frowned. What's the difference, he asked. The elder smiled sadly. The land forgives survival, he said. It does not forgive cruelty. And then he added something that froze the historian where he stood. Some places take back what was stolen from them. The historian published none of this, but in his private notebook, discovered decades later, he wrote a single line. The mouth of the earth was not a place of punishment. It was a place of balance. And balance eventually comes for all of us. So what happened to the fugitives Amaro was hunting? Joao and Rafael survived in Colombo. For many years, both became leaders, teaching others how to navigate the forests without being found. Ana Flor lived the longest. She rarely spoke of the swamp, but when she did, her voice grew small. She claimed she heard something. The moment Amaro disappeared, not a scream, not a struggle, but a single word carried through the trees. Enough, and she believed, with the certainty of someone who has seen the world's brutality up close, that the swamp wasn't killing Amaro. It was returning him to something older, something that didn't need vengeance, because it already had justice. There are places in the world that hold memory the way others hold water, places that carry the weight of every step taken upon them. And the mouth of the earth, that swamp remembers. It remembers the feet that ran in fear. It remembers the boots that chased them. It remembers pleas and sobs and rage. It remembers every cruelty that sank into its mud. And perhaps most chilling of all, it remembers the voice of the man it swallowed. Some nights, locals say the wind through the mangroves still carries a faint, broken whisper. Don't run, don't run. They say it's a warning, or a curse, or a confession. But there is one interpretation that feels truer than all the others. Some men spend their lives hunting others, only to discover, too late, that the world was hunting them the entire time. And so the story ends with truth, as old as the land itself. The earth forgets nothing and forgives even less.